Continuing from the previous episode 547. Chapter 1476, Encounter. A cluster of lights flashed across the empty realm. Its speed was as quick as lightning. In a flash, it appeared at the edge of the darkness before finally disappearing. Brother Xiao Yan, with our speed, we should be able to reach the Eastern Dragon Island in another 10+ minutes. Yao Ming lifted his eyes and looked in the distance where the flowing light was. He turned his head and spoke to Xiao Yan beside him. Let's increase our speed. Xiao Yan slightly nodded. His eyes looked to the depths of the darkness as the fist in his sleeve was slowly clenched. He waved his sleeve and his speed once again soared. Yao Ming and the rest could only hurriedly follow him upon seeing him go even faster. Wait, there is a familiar aura. This flight continued for a couple of minutes before Xiao Yan's body suddenly stilled. He frowned as he looked to a part of the empty realm to his left. Bang! An intense energy explosion was emitted from within the empty space. Immediately, a figure spat out blood and pulled back, falling into a group of people. The figure's face was pale as his eyes furiously looked around him. Over 10 figures appeared in the surroundings a moment later. All of their auras were extremely powerful. Clearly, they were all very strong, especially the 2 elders leading them. Their auras appeared ordinary, but there was a terrifying pressure spreading from them. They were surprisingly 2 peak experts who had reached the Ban Sheng class. 3 Great Dragon Islands, you people are really bold to attack Her Majesty, the Dragon Emperor. There were around 7 to 8 figures surrounded by the 10 individuals, but most of them were seriously injured. There were 2 familiar faces among these people. If one were to carefully look at them, they were He Qing, who had helped Xiao Yan a couple of times, and Elder Zhu Li, whom Xiao Yan had met once before. Only these 2 within the group appeared to be in a slightly better state, but their faces were currently extremely gloomy. They had been out on patrol. Who would have expected them to learn of the 3 large Dragon Islands' attack on the Eastern Dragon Island upon returning from the patrol? Before they could hurry back with great speed, they ended up meeting this group from the 3 large Dragon Islands, which had sealed the Eastern Dragon Island. A big battle immediately erupted. The result was something that need not be mentioned. With 2 Banshengs, the other party had easily defeated them and had chased them here. Clearly, the other party was planning on eliminating all of them. Zhu Li, the 3 Great Dragon Kings are the true rulers. You people have found some fake from an unknown place in an attempt to unite the ancient Void Dragon. It is really too naive of you. A man wearing battle armor mockingly glanced at Zhu Li and laughed. He was one of the commanders of this unit and possessed the strength of an intermediate Ban Sheng. You would know better than I do in your hearts whether it is a fake. It looks like you people have already forgotten the rules of our tribe under the rule of the 3 Great Dragon Kings. Zhu Li's expression was gloomy as he commented on the situation. That old armored man frowned slightly upon hearing these words. His expression was a little unnatural. Within the ancient Void Dragon tribe, the royal clan held absolute authority over the ordinary tribe members. The pressure that originated from within the bloodline caused an ordinary tribe member to be afraid of fighting against the royal clan. The 2 of them possessed a high status within the 3 Great Dragon Islands. Naturally, they also understood that the young Dragon Emperor on the Eastern Dragon Island did indeed possess an extremely pure royal bloodline, but they had been ruled by the 3 Dragon Kings for many years, so their way of thinking had been altered. They might not dare to directly attack that young Dragon Emperor, but they did not feel much fear while attacking the others. Qianzan, do not waste your breath with this old fellow. Quickly finish them off. The resistance from the Eastern Dragon Island is more intense than we expected. We must return quickly. A red-faced old man impatiently waved his hand and cried out as he stood beside that old armored man. 2 old bastards, your 3 Great Dragon Island do not have the ability to destroy my Eastern Dragon Island. Once the Dragon Emperor becomes stronger, your 3 Great Dragon Islands will simply wait to die. He Qing furiously cursed. That is only if you can wait until that time comes. The red-faced old man coldly laughed. His eyes immediately turned cold as he threw a palm at He Qing across the empty space. A frightening wind tore through the air and swiftly smashed into He Qing's body with lightning-like speed. Grug. The current He Qing might have reached the 8th change peak of the Do Zun class, but how could he compare with a high-level Ban Sheng? The armor on his body immediately crumbled. A large mouthful of blood was spat out as his body collided with a few other tribe members behind him. You old fellow who doesn't know his limit. How dare you roar at this elder? That red-faced old man coldly laughed with disdain after causing He Qing to spit out blood and fly back with a palm. You damn bastard! He Qing's eyes immediately turned red after suffering this heavy blow. His body suddenly swelled to twice its size. Kill all of them. Do not allow anyone to live. The red-faced old man coldly smiled and shook his head upon seeing He Qing go mad. He simply waved his hand and gave a command. How dare you? Zhu Li became furious. A monstrous dou qi erupted as he threw a punch forward. A vast and mighty dou qi gathered into a 1,000-foot large dragon that crazily charged toward the red-faced old man. Roar! The body of that old armored man swelled as Zhu Li attacked. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a half-man half-dragon combat state. He roared at the sky before shooting forward like a cannonball. With just a punch, he completely shattered the giant energy dragon. Zhu Li, both of our strengths are similar. How will you fight me now that you are injured? That elder, who had turned into a half-dragon, stepped through empty air. His body strangely appeared above Elder Zhu Li's head as a large dragon claw violently tore through the air. It was accompanied by an extremely sharp wind. Bang! Elder Zhu Li clenched his teeth as this extremely ferocious attack came down from above. An armor with dragon symbols on it appeared around his body. After which, the armor appeared like a furious dragon as it violently collided with that half-dragon elder. Bang bang! That red-faced elder coldly smiled and waved his sleeve as Elder Zhu Li engaged that half-man half-dragon elder in an intense battle. Each time he did so, a warrior from the Eastern Dragon Island spit out blood and fall back. The armor on their bodies would also explode. Finally, the warriors from the 3 great dragon tribes would pounce on that warrior from the Eastern Dragon Island. I will fight with you until the end. A fierce fury immediately erupted within He Qing's eyes after seeing his tribe members being captured one after another. A crazy punch smashed into 2 figures heading his way, causing them to vomit blood and fly back. His foot stomped through the air as his body shot toward that red-faced elder with lightning-like speed. An ant-like existence actually dares to challenge me? The red-faced old man coldly laughed and shook his head upon seeing this attack. He clenched his fist and dense scales swiftly appeared. He quickly threw a punch as a deep sonic boom formed under his fist with a bang. After which, it collided with He Qing, who had explosively shot over. Bang! This hard collision caused the red-faced elder's body to barely tremble. He also took half a step back. On the other hand, He Qing's arm revealed a vein and emitted a puff sound as it shot out many blood arrows. The vague sound of bones cracking also appeared. His hand feebly fell as his body flew back a distance of 10,000 feet. Only then did he slowly come to a halt. He Qing remained suspended in the empty realm with blood covering his body. The strength in his body had been shattered by a punch from the red-faced old man. If his physical body wasn't extremely strong, that punch would likely have blasted his body apart. Am I going to die? He Qing's eyes gradually became blurry. At this moment, he had been seriously injured by that red-faced old man. Although he felt dissatisfied in his heart, he also understood that there was an extremely big gap between him and the other party. Relax, I will throw you into the dragon tomb once you are dead. It can be considered a resting place for you. The space in front of He Qing fluctuated as the red-faced elder appeared. His eyes were cold and indifferent as they looked at He Qing. After which, he slowly lowered his body and placed his hand gently above He Qing's head. A cold glint surged within his somewhat turbid eyes. Huo Zan, the Dragon Emperor will not let you off if you dare to kill him. Elder Zhu Li, who was being dragged into distance, felt his body turn icy cold upon seeing He Qing's situation. His eyes were blood red as he roared. He, the Dragon Emperor? That is only if she can survive the combined strength of the 3 Dragon Kings. That red-faced old man shook his head and ridiculed. He lowered his head and looked at He Qing, who was planning to gather his strength to unleash an attack. He continued with pity in his voice, "You are really an extremely hard character. Unfortunately, you have chosen the wrong side." He Qing shook his head somewhat impatiently after uttering those words. He grabbed the top of He Qing's head and slowly used his strength. The victory this time around belongs to the 3 great dragon islands, but you can rest assured that many people will accompany you. At the very least, you will not feel lonely. A cruel smile surfaced on the red-faced old man's face. His sharp fingers gently pressed down and formed 5 bloody holes in He Qing's head, but he suddenly sensed a somewhat icy cold hand quietly land on his head as he was about to shatter He Qing's head. At the same time, a soft voice was slowly transmitted into his ear. His body completely stilled like a statue. "Tell me, do you think that you will be able to shatter his head faster than me doing the same to yours?" He Qing, who had already shut his eyes to await death, suddenly opened both of his eyes upon hearing the soft voice that did not contain any anger. A familiar skinny figure was appeared in his eyes. Xiao Yan, if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Continuing from the previous episode 548. Chapter 1477. Resolve. He Qing's eyes were extremely stunned as he looked at the skinny figure, who had appeared beside him, especially when he saw that the figure's hand was gently pressing down on the red-faced old man's head. His eyelids involuntarily twitched. "Who are you?" "I am Elder Huozan from the Northern Dragon Island." The red-faced old man's body completely stilled at this moment. His body did not dare move even a bit. He could sense the frightening strength of the hand on his head. His heart clearly understood that his head would explode into a cluster of bloody fog if this hand gently shook. Just where has this monster come from? Why was I not able to sense his approach? The eyes of the red-faced old man continued to flicker. His expression was also rapidly changing. "Release your hand." Xiao Yan indifferently glanced at the old man and gave him a command. The red-faced old man's expression changed. He quickly rotated his eyes. "I will count to 3 and we will release together." "What do you say?" "Xiao Yan, kill him. He is an elite Ban Sheng from the Northern Dragon Island and has a much higher status than me. It is worthwhile to exchange my life for his." He Qing's face turned purple as he softly roared. The red-faced old man's eyes turned cold. He immediately felt the desire to shatter He Qing's head, but he could only suppress the murderous desire in his heart the moment he thought about this mysterious person, who was someone he had never met. He asked in a deep voice, "What do you think?" "All right." Xiao Yan smiled. "All right, 1, 2, 3. The red-faced elder rejoiced. 3 numbers were quickly uttered from his mouth. After the last number sounded, he felt that icy cold hand above his head indeed shift. He hurriedly tossed He Qing aside and flew away with lightning-like speed. "May I know who this friend is?" "This matter is entirely a matter of our ancient Void Dragon tribe. Friend, I hope that you will not intervene. The Dragon Kings of the 3 great Dragon Islands are only a short distance away. If they are attracted here, I think that it will be extremely difficult for you to escape." The red-faced man managed to clearly see the person who had intervened earlier after flying away. He was immediately startled after seeing that this person was so young. His voice was deep as he spoke. Xiao Yan acted as though he did not hear the red-faced man's cry. He lowered his body and helped He Qing up. After which, he took out a medicinal pill and stuffed it into He Qing's mouth. He laughed. "How is it? It isn't enough to kill me." He Qing bitterly smiled and shook his head. He looked at the red-faced old man and regretfully said, "You should have killed him earlier. This person is an elite Ban Sheng. Killing him would have been equivalent to cutting off the flesh of the Northern Dragon Island. This kind of opportunity is not something that you can find all the time." He Qing's voice contained a feeling of great disappointment. From the way he saw it, using his life in exchange for that of an elite Ban Sheng was incredibly worthwhile. "Huozan, what happened?" This unexpected change was also sensed by the half-dragon elder who was fighting with Elder Zhu Li. He frowned and cried out loud. His attacks remained extremely ruthless as he spoke. His dragon claws were swung and a sharp wind forced Elder Zhu Li into a somewhat miserable state. Elder Zhu Li had been injured to begin with, so he was unable to defeat the other party. A problem has occurred. The red-faced old man, who was called Huozan, stared intently at Xiao Yan. He could sense a vague pressure from Xiao Yan. Hence, he did not dare to be careless as he replied in a deep voice. Bang! That half-dragon elder frowned upon hearing this. He suddenly threw a palm and forced Elder Zhu Li back. His eyes looked over and finally landed on Xiao Yan. Those eyes immediately narrowed as he cried out in a cold voice, "Friend, interfering in the matters of my ancient Void Dragon tribe in this empty realm is not a smart decision." Xiao Yan? Elder Zhu Li had also used this opportunity to sigh in relief. He looked at the human figure beside He Qing and was also greatly surprised, but he appeared to have recalled something as his expression changed. His body moved and appeared beside Xiao Yan. He said, "Why have you come here? The matter here is not something that you can intervene with. Bring He Qing and leave. I will protect you. Trying to escape? How can it be so easy? Friend, this is your last chance." The red-faced old man's eyes gradually revealed some unfriendliness as he stared at Xiao Yan and spoke. "An intermediate Ban Sheng actually dares to act arrogantly in front of me." Xiao Yan slightly frowned. He suddenly took a step forward, and his body disappeared in an instant. The expression of the red-faced old man drastically changed upon watching Xiao Yan disappear. His body turned into a ray of light that hurriedly pulled back, but his body had just moved when a large hand penetrated the space in front of him and landed above his head. At the same time, an ice-cold voice was transmitted through the air. "Move again and you will die." The red-faced old man's eyes were shocked as he looked at the figure that had slowly appeared from the empty space in front of him. A moment later, his somewhat hoarse voice slowly seeped out from between his teeth. You are an elite Dou Sheng." The red-faced old man was not the only one who was stunned by Xiao Yan's attack. Even He Qing and Elder Zhu Li were completely astounded as they watched Xiao Yan move. They were unable to recover. When Xiao Yan had left the Eastern Dragon Island back then, he had merely been a 5-star Dou Zun. In just a couple of years, he had leapt from a 5-star Dou Zun to a Dou Sheng. Damn, how can he expect one to continue living? He Qing muttered in stunned disbelief. He had trained for many years, but he had only managed to climb to the 8th change peak of the Dou Zun class. There was still a great distance to the Ban Sheng class. In the end, Xiao Yan, who had been weaker than him back then, had already advanced beyond him. Xiao Yan pressed his hand against the head of the red-faced old man. He glanced at the red face that was gradually turning pale. After which, his finger gently pressed on the old man's forehead. With the press of this finger, a bloody hole ended up forming on the forehead of the red-faced old man. The aura of the old man's body quickly became weak. Xiao Yan randomly touched the man's body with his hand and a symbol appeared on the red-faced old man's forehead, sealing his Dou Qi. Xiao Yan completed all of these actions before grabbing the red-faced old man to move. He appeared beside He Qing and randomly tossed that old man over. He laughed. "There is no need to sacrifice your life to capture him." He Qing was a little dull as he received the red-faced old man, who was in an unknown condition. The powerful and untouchable elite Ban Sheng in his eyes had become this useless in Xiao Yan's hands. Within a couple of minutes, that person, who had been acting high and mighty earlier, was no different than a dead dog. Gulp. Elder Zhu Li by the side also quietly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Even at his peak condition, he would have had to experience a bitter battle in order to defeat this person, yet in Xiao Yan's hands. This fellow, just how has he trained? He has reached this level within a short few years. No wonder he is a friend of the Dragon Emperor. He is indeed extraordinary. Withdraw. That half-dragon elder in the distance was stunned because of this scene. He recovered a moment later and a chill surged from his feet into his heart. A stern cry was decisively emitted from his mouth. Since the other party was able to capture Huo Zan with such ease, that person was definitely a genuine Dou Sheng. An expert of that level was not someone they could deal with. Remaining behind would only be sharing the same fate as Huo Zan. The half-dragon elder was the first to pull back after his cry sounded. Within a couple of flashes, he had appeared at the edge of the darkness. He needed to report this matter as soon as possible. At that time, there would naturally be some experts from the island who would finish this brat off. Xiao Yan, do not allow them to escape. Otherwise, they may end up alerting the enemy. Elder Zhu Li hurriedly cried out while feeling startled. He had not expected that old fellow to simply just run away. Xiao Yan grinned and nodded, but he did not move. His eyes glanced in the direction of the fleeing group. Around 2 minutes or so later, a ray of light suddenly flashed. Many figures rushed over from that direction and appeared in front of everyone. It was surprisingly Yao Ming's group. At this moment, they were holding some people in their hands. That half-dragon elder, who had fled earlier, was also among them. Ha ha, this old fellow is really cunning, but what can he do with just the strength of a mere Ban Sheng? Yao Ming threw the half-dragon elder, who had been beaten unconscious, to Xiao Yan and laughed. Xiao Yan received this elder and sealed his dou qi up. After which, he tossed this person to He Qing. His eyes landed on Elder Zhu Li as he laughed. This is the 9 Serene Deep Ground Python Tribe's chief, Yao Ming. 9 Serene Deep Ground Python Tribe? Zhu Li's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. His eyes cautiously looked at Yao Ming as he said, "It is rumored that the 3 large dragon islands have dispatched people to ask for other tribes' cooperation to deal with our eastern dragon island." Ha. This elder need not be worried. The one who agreed to cooperate with the 3 large dragon islands was that useless brother of mine. However, I have regained my tribal chief position from him. Yao Ming smiled and replied, "Now, I have been invited by brother Xiao Yan. If the eastern dragon island does not despise this help, my 9 Serene Deep Ground Python tribe can lend you a hand." Oh! Elder Zhu Li was startled upon hearing this offer. His eyes landed on Xiao Yan. Only after seeing Xiao Yan nod with a smile did he reveal an expression of wild joy. Their eastern dragon island desperately needed reinforcements. "What is the situation of the eastern dragon island like now?" Xiao Yan asked. Elder Zhu Li softly sighed and shook his head. His voice was low and deep, very bad. The 3 great dragon islands have poured all over this place. They have made up their minds to kill the Dragon Emperor before she can truly reach her peak. The eastern dragon island is in complete chaos. The Dragon Emperor has been surrounded by the 3 great dragon kings. A grave expression appeared on Xiao Yan's face. The situation of the eastern dragon island was worse than he had imagined. "Go, let's head to the eastern dragon island." Xiao Yan slowly exhaled. The fist under his sleeve was slowly tightened. Regardless of how strong the 3 great dragon kings were, it was impossible for him to simply ignore Zi Yan's cur. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Continuing from the previous episode 549. Chapter 1478. Meeting Zi Yan again. Even light disappeared within the dark, empty realm. This world was monotonous and lonely. At the same time, it was plagued with much danger. There would occasionally be some surging, chaotic spatial flow that could forcefully shatter an expert dou zun. Hence, other than the ancient void dragons, which specialized in spatial strength, seldom would any humans or experts from other races enter the empty realm. Of course, this kind of place might be completely remote and deserted to others, but it was quite beneficial for the ancient void dragon tribe. The chaotic spatial flow in this place was not only able to train their control over spatial strength, but they were also able to use the tearing force of the chaotic flow to train their extremely strong physical bodies. Some light suddenly appeared from within the nothingness. If one were to look in the direction of the light, one would see an extremely huge island suspended in the emptiness. Bang bang! Extremely intense energy explosions continued to be emitted from that enormous island. Wave after wave of wild and violent energy attacks began to sweep in all directions from the island like a storm. Everything within 100,000 feet from that island was completely destroyed. There were quite a number of people waiting gravely in the empty space around the island. Sharp eyes swept around the island. Anyone attempting to charge out of the island would be violently smashed down by the storm-like attacks. These troops had formed an airtight dragnet which completely surrounded the island. 20 people were lingering at a certain spot above the island. Their eyes continued to sweep over this group at the middle. A cold and stern-looking strong man was sitting down in the middle of the group. The aura of this person was quite strong. He was even a little stronger than He Qing. He was an expert who had reached the 9th change peak of the dou zun class. Swoosh! This large man stared intently at the island below. Suddenly, his ears slightly moved as his eyes swung around the empty space in the distance. His body suddenly stood up as he let out a deep cry. "Be careful, someone is approaching." A cluster of light suddenly flashed and appeared from deep within the darkness after his last word sounded. It appeared a short distance from the group within a couple of flashes. "He Qing, they are from the eastern dragon island. Attack!" The eyes of the large man were extremely sharp. He managed to identify He Qing from within the cluster of lights with a glance. His expression sank as he cried out in a cold voice. Understood. The many human figures cried out in an orderly fashion after hearing his shout. Many powerful energy light pillars shot out. Their combined attack gave them an extremely powerful momentum. Bang! However, a faint voice was emitted while these light pillars approached the cluster of lights. Everyone was horrified to watch those many light pillars explode with a bang. Soon after, a frightening strength that could not be resisted surged out of the empty space and violently struck their bodies. Grug. This attack was undoubtedly an exterminating force for the warriors from these three great dragon islands. The armors on those many warriors was shattered into dust. Other than the big man, who had reached the 9th change peak of the Dozun class, the remaining people fell to the dragon island below. Bastard, who exactly are you? The large man's eyes were shocked as he saw their defenses crumbling in the blink of an eye. He quickly let out a low roar. The flowing lights slowly disappeared a short distance in front of the large man. Xiao Yan stepped out from within a light. His eyes did not pause on the large man in front of him. Instead, they swept over the dragon island below. At this moment, the eastern dragon island was filled with holes. Extremely intense battles erupted all over the place. A wild and violent energy caused the entire island to become much dimmer. Although the dragon island was in a complete chaos, Xiao Yan could see that the defensive line of the eastern dragon island had shrunk from the outer region to the central dragon hall. That location was the middle of the eastern dragon island. In other words, other than the territory around the dragon hall, almost 2/3 of the eastern dragon island had been captured by the three great dragon islands. This situation was quite bad. Where is Ziyan? Xiao Yan's eyes swept around him, but he did not discover a hint of Ziyan. He frowned and had just posed a question when an extremely frightening energy ripple was suddenly transmitted over. Xiao Yan's expression was slightly altered upon sensing this energy fluctuation. He lifted his head and looked for the source of this energy fluctuation. He found a bright sun-like light suspended at that spot. It was possible to vaguely see a couple of figures exchanging blows with lightning-like speed. After each exchange, waves of terrifying energy storm would sweep apart. If they weren't some distance from the Dragon Island, these remnant waves would have completely destroyed the eastern Dragon Island. Xiao Yan's eyes stared intently at the circle of light. A flame slowly surged into both of his eyes, allowing his gaze to penetrate through the light and capture everything inside. A somewhat familiar back with long purple hair that emitted a faint enchantment was the first to be imprinted into his sight. Who else could that familiar demeanor belong to other than Ziyan? However, her current appearance was no longer that of a little girl. Instead, she had become a great beauty. Her tall figure was wrapped within a dark golden form-fitting armor. The armor was not bulky. It pressed against her exquisite and well-proportioned body, outlining her beautiful and sexy curves. The faint temptation hid a bone-piercing chill. The little girl from back then had become such an alluring and bewitching lady. That exquisite face contained an additional cold aura because her eyebrows had been lifted slightly. Although she was still young, it was possible to see a faint aura of authority between her thin eyebrows. Once she fully matured, her demeanor of royalty as the Dragon Emperor of the ancient Void Dragon tribe would frighten anyone looking at her. On the opposite side of Ziyan stood three figures. The three of them possessed middle-aged appearance. Each and every action they made was domineering, revealing their fierce and overbearing nature. Those are the three great dragon kings, huh? Xiao Yan's eyes locked onto the three figures. A grave expression flashed across his eyes. He could sense that those three possessed a strength that surpassed Yao Ming. In other words, those three fellows were, at the very least, 3-star Do Shengs. Ziyan was holding a long dark golden spear that was taller than her body as she stood within the light sphere. The spear danced and emitted a glaring golden glitter. It had managed to prevent the three great dragon kings from gaining an advantage. Her fighting strength was completely unleashed. It seemed that her dragon phoenix constitution caused her strength to soar. Compared to Xiao Yan, it was likely that she could truly be described as having reached the peak in a single stride. Moreover, this peak was even higher than Xiao Yan. The dragon phoenix possessed the bloodline strength of the ancient void dragon and the heaven phoenix. It was the true ruler of the magical beast world. When a dragon phoenix truly reached the peak, this monstrous existence would not need to feel fear even when facing a legendary Do Di. However, that was in the future. It had only been a short period of time since Ziyan had become Dragon Phoenix. Although her strength had soared during these few years, she still wasn't strong enough to face these three great Dragon Kings, who were a lot more experienced than her. It was obvious that this stubborn resistance could not last for long. Roar! While Xiao Yan had become absent-minded because of the battle in the distance, the large man from earlier suddenly emitted a dragon roar. You are seeking death. Xiao Yan's eyes turned cold after being awoken by the dragon roar. He threw a palm forward. That large man, whose body was rapidly pulling back, erupted into a cluster of bloody fog. This fellow was sending a message. Many three Great Dragon Island experts are hurrying over. Elder Zhu Li spoke in a deep voice. Let's head to the Dragon Hall first. Xiao Yan's eyes flickered. He did indeed see many figures rushing in this direction. Without hesitating, he moved his body and led the way to the Dragon Hall. Yao Ming and the others hurriedly followed behind him. Block them! The Dragon Island emitted many loud cries while Xiao Yan's group moved. There were many three Great Dragon Island experts in front that were attempting to block Xiao Yan's group. HMPH. Xiao Yan merely smiled as this obstruction formed. The dou qi within his body circulated to the limit. He widened his mouth and a sea of flames was spat out. Their frighteningly high temperature caused the expressions of some of the elite Ban Sheng to change. With Xiao Yan's current strength, the strength of his heavenly flame was many times stronger than in the past. A sea of flames had spread by just widening his mouth. If this was in the past, he would have difficulty creating such a great force even if he had drained all of the dou qi within his body. Xiao Yan waved his hand as the sea of flames blocked the attacks. A fire barrier surrounded his group before they swiftly charged through the sea of flames. They had appeared in the air above the Dragon Hall within a couple of flashes. Where have you bastards come from? You dare to intervene in the plans of our three Great Dragon Islands? A thunder-like explosive cry sounded the moment Xiao Yan appeared above the Dragon Hall. Immediately, a large black-faced man with a giant ape-like body appeared. He had a ferocious expression as he threw a punch toward Xiao Yan. The frightening strength caused the air within 1,000 feet completely vanish in an instant. Xiao Yan, be careful. He is the first commander of the Western Dragon Island, Zan Mo. He has the strength of a 2-star Dou Sheng. Zhu Li's expression slightly changed upon seeing that large black-faced man. He hurriedly cried out in the process. Xiao Yan waved his sleeve. A gentle force delivered everyone to the Dragon Hall below before he turned his body. His body suddenly swelled and turned into a golden giant that was not inferior to the other party in the blink of an eye. After which, he threw a punch and collided head-on with Zan Mo in front of many shocked pairs of eyes. Get lost! Xiao Yan's furious thunder-like roar of Xiao suddenly exploded over the sky the moment the clash occurred. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Continuing from the previous episode 550. Chapter 1479. Eruption of a Big Battl. Clang! Two strong demon god-like figures suddenly clashed in the sky. A sudden metallic sound was accompanied by a frightening storm as it suddenly swept across the sky. The experts from both parties within 1,000-foot radius were sent flying by the storm. The blood within their bodies violently flowed in the process. The wind erupted and that golden light giant, which Xiao Yan had transformed into, trembled slightly. He took a step back. That large man named Zan Mo on the other side staggered a couple of steps back. Each of his steps collapsed into many dark empty spaces. Brat, you do have some ability. Surprise flashed across Zan Mo's face after he failing to gain an advantage in this collision. His eyes were a little grave as he looked at Xiao Yan, who was a short distance away, and coldly smiled. Xiao Yan's eyes swept over Zan Mo. His brows were also slightly knit. The strength of the three Great Dragon Islands was indeed powerful. Their subordinates also included such a powerful expert. If Xiao Yan had not relied on the King Kong glass body, his strong body that had been refined by many natural treasures, and the Heaven Phoenix essence blood, he would not have been able to gain the upper hand in the physical clash earlier. Brat, who exactly are you? Tell me your name. The matters of my ancient Void Dragon tribe are not something an ordinary person can interfere with. Zan Mo looked at Xiao Yan as he cried out in a cold voice. Xiao Yan completely ignored Zan Mo's cold cry. His eyes swept to the northwest. Two figures were hurrying over from the distance with lightning-like speed. They appeared beside Zan Mo within a couple of flashes. At the same time, an icy cold voice was quickly emitted. Zan Mo, why are you still wasting your breath? Just attack and capture him. The three Great Dragon Kings will likely be victorious soon. Nothing must go wrong before this. The two who had appeared in front of Zan Mo was an old man in a green robe and an old man in yellow robe. These two appeared extremely old, but their eyes possessed a surging chill. Clearly, they were not merciful people. Xiao Yan's eyes were grave as he studied these two old men. His eyelids involuntarily began to twitch. Based on his senses, he could tell that these two were a little stronger than Zan Mo. They were at the top of the intermediate 2-star Do Sheng class. HMPH, are the three of you trying to bully our Eastern Zan region because you think that we have no one? A furious cry was suddenly emitted from the Dragon Hall soon after the two old men appeared. Xiao Yan sensed the space around him fluctuate as two white-haired old men with unusually sharp eyes appeared. Xiao Yan, this is the first and second elders of our Eastern Dragon Island. Zhu Li hurriedly came over and explained to Xiao Yan who these two white-haired old men were. Greetings to two elders. Xiao Yan grinned upon hearing this explanation. He cupped his hands together as he faced the two smiling old men. Little friend Xiao Yan need not be so polite. You are a friend of the Dragon Emperor. Naturally, you are an important guest of our Eastern Dragon Island. You have really helped us this time around. My Eastern Dragon Island will remember this favor. A white-haired old man holding a dragon-shaped walking stick glanced at Xiao Yan as a smile slowly surfaced on his face. His voice was also quite courteous. That green-robed man is the first elder of the Western Dragon Island. He is called Zhu Mu and is an intermediate 2-star Do Sheng. That yellow-robed old man is the first elder of the Southern Dragon Island. He is called Lai Shan and possesses a similar strength as Zhu Mu. Zhu Li softly informed Xiao Yan. These two people, along with Zan Mo, can be considered the highest-ranking commanders of the three great dragon islands other than the three great dragon kings. The three of them are in charge of the offensive against the Eastern Dragon Island. Xiao Yan slightly nodded. His heart was a little shaken. 3 2-star Do Shengs was a lineup that an ordinary faction could not take out. The ancient Void Dragon tribe was indeed worthy of being the strongest tribe in the magical beast world. Moreover, this was a situation where they had separated. If they ended up unifying, they would not be inferior to the Hun clan, the GU clan, or the other super factions. Old man Qing Shan, are all of you going to continue this stubborn resistance after things have developed to this stage? You should be aware that by continuing to resist, the strength of the Eastern Dragon Island will be completely exhausted. That green-robed first elder from the Western Dragon Island looked at the old man holding a walking stick and coldly laughed. My Eastern Dragon Island will not allow you traitors, who have forgotten the rules of the tribe, to continue on, even if we have to exhaust our last man. The Eastern Dragon Island's first elder, who was addressed as Qing Shan, rolled his eyes and spoke in a faint voice. I will see just whether your tongue will remain this tough after the three Dragon Kings finish off your Dragon Emperor. The first elder Zhu Mu from the Western Dragon Island laughed and said, if we count the time, the reinforcements sent by the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe will likely be arriving soon. At that time, the old me shall see just how you are going to resist. Shameless fellow. The ancient Void Dragon and the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe are enemies. You have even forgotten such a hatred. You are unworthy of being a tribal member of the ancient Void Dragon tribe. Back then, the Dragon Emperor had spent effort grooming all of you. Your consciousness has all been eaten by dogs. The second elder from the Eastern Dragon Island grit his teeth and furiously cursed. The expressions of Zan Mo's group became slightly unnatural after hearing the second elder mention the Dragon Emperor. They finally replied a moment later, the Dragon Emperor has been missing for thousands of years. It is likely that he is no longer in this world. As for the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe, we will finish them off once we unify. The ancient Void Dragon tribe has been separated for too long. It must be united as soon as possible, yet all of you are blocking the unification. What gibberish! The Dragon Emperor is the one who possesses the true royal bloodline. The three great Dragon Kings are partially related if that, yet you dare to proclaim the unification of the ancient Void Dragon tribe? It was because of their selfish desires that they separated the ancient Dragon clan back then. First Elder Qing Mu chided. Xiao Yan by the side gained an understanding of the situation after hearing this exchange between the two sides. All of the members of the ancient Void Dragon tribe wanted unification, but all of them had different ideas. Hence, this had eventually resulted in the eruption of this big war. You need not wait for the members of the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe. I coincidentally met them along the way and sent them packing. Xiao Yan did not wish to understand the differences in opinion within the ancient dragon tribe. The only thing that he understood was that he had an extremely deep relationship with Ziyan. On the other hand, he did not have a good impression of the three great dragon kings. He would naturally choose Ziyan. He grabbed the area below with his hand. A human figure appeared in it. It was the Heaven Demon Phoenix Tribe's Qin Huang. What? Both parties were startled upon hearing Xiaoyan's words. They hurriedly shifted their eyes and caught sight of Qin Huang, who was in a sealed state. You bastard! How dare you ruin the plans of our three great islands? Zhan Mo stared at Xiaoyan as he furiously cried out. You too, why are you still wasting your breath with him? Attack and flatten this dragon hall. The Western and Southern Dragon Islands' first elders nodded slowly upon hearing this order. Their mouths emitted a dragon roar. Soon after, hundreds of lights came rushing over from a short distance away. They stopped in the air above the dragon hall. The 10 people leading this group possessed an extremely frightening aura. They had all reached the Ban Sheng class. The remaining people were mostly above 5th star of the Dozun class. Roar! Many dragon roars were emitted from the dragon hall below after seeing the experts from the three great dragon islands gather together. Immediately, the rushing sound of wind appeared. Many figures appeared behind Xiaoyan in an orderly fashion. Their eyes ruthlessly looked at the large group of people in the distance. The dou qi within their bodies began to rapidly circulate. The atmosphere of the entire area became extremely tense as the experts from both parties stepped forward. Bang! A loud and clear energy explosion was suddenly emitted in the distant space while both parties were facing each other. This sudden explosion also shattered the face-off. Many powerful auras began to charge into the sky. Charge! The experts from both parties seemed to have become ferocious tigers that had descended the mountains with low and deep roars. All of them rushed forward. In an instant, the entire place turned into a complete chaos. An intense chaotic battle erupted. Bang bang bang! The battle that erupted caused one to feel dazzled. Although the number of experts from the three great dragon islands was much greater than the Eastern Dragon Island, it was clearly not easy to swiftly swallow the fighting strength of the Eastern Dragon Island. Hence, the battle descended into a seesaw-like stalemate after the battle erupted. Bang! Xiaoyan's palm struck an expert who had reached the peak of the Dozun class, forcing the expert to spit out blood and retreat. His body quickly moved as he appeared beside the expert Dozun. After which, he grabbed the Dozun's hand and used him as a weapon in front of many shocked eyes. He violently smashed this peak Dozun into an elite Ban Sheng. The frightening force caused the arm of this peak Dozun class expert to explode. At the same time, the expert struck the elite Ban Sheng until the Ban Sheng spat out blood and flew backwards. Xiaoyan suddenly lifted his head after sending that Ban Sheng flying. His eyes looked to the empty space in the distance. The battleground there was the most important one. Its end result would determine the outcome of this ancient dragon tribe's war and would decide the final victor. However, the situation in that light cluster caused Xiaoyan's heart to sink. Ziyan was tiring. She was being pushed back by the combined attacks of the three dragon kings. 2 elders, Tribal Chief Yao Ming will help the both of you deal with Zhan Mo and the other 2. I will help Ziyan. Xiaoyan's eyes suddenly became sharp as he exhaled a deep breath of air. His mouth emitted a stern howl. A pair of huge green-red bone wings spread apart. Block him! Zhan Mo and the other 2 first elders were immediately startled upon seeing Xiaoyan move. Before they could give chase, Yao Ming and the first and second elders from the Eastern Dragon Island hurried over and blocked them. Xiaoyan's bone wings were flapped the moment this clash occurred. A wind-lightning sound appeared. His body rushed out of the Eastern Dragon Island with lightning-like speed as he hurried towards the battleground in the empty space. 3 great dragon kings, I wish to see just how frightening all of you are. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Continuing from the previous episode 551, Chapter 1480, 3 Great Dragon Kings. Bang! The long dark golden spear was just like a furious roaring dragon that cut a bright arc in the emptiness before it ruthlessly smashed into the hand of a middle-aged man with a crown over his head. His hand had transformed into a claw. The frightening force shattered a great amount of scales on the dragon claw. The moment that long spear left that delicate and beautiful figure, another figure began to approach in a ghost-like fashion. An extremely sharp palm wind unhesitatingly and mercilessly slammed toward the beautiful figure. HMPH. The owner of that beautiful figure narrowed her eyes when she sensed this sneak attack. Her sharp nose emitted a low cold snort. With a shake of her arm, that long spear seemed to be connected to a chain as it was instantly swung in a soul-stirring arc, forming a semi-sphere that heavily struck the sharp palm wind. The powerful force erupted and the two were forced to stagger back before they finally stabilized their bodies. Ha ha, it is indeed worthy of being the Dragon Phoenix constitution. Its strength is actually this powerful. This failed surprise attack caused the man to involuntarily let out some praise. He laughed. Niece Ziyan, why do you need to continue this stubborn resistance? Although you possess the extremely rare Dragon Phoenix constitution, you have yet to mature. You are really being too naive if you are thinking of fighting the three of us alone. Western Dragon King, you should stop acting in front of me. The three of you had taken advantage of my father's disappearance to split the ancient Void Dragon tribe, resulting in the current state of the ancient Void Dragon tribe. It is not too much to say that the three of you are the sinners of this tribe. Ziyan's face was dark as a chill spread from her pale purple eyes with a laugh. The three of us also possess the royal bloodline. It is only logical for us to proclaim ourselves kings. Since when can a young fellow like you reprimand us? A somewhat shady-looking middle-aged man coldly stated. Niece Ziyan, the losses from the internal conflict within the ancient dragon tribe have been far too severe. Why can't you take a step back and avoid this battle? There was a man in royal robes among the trio. This person always had a smile hanging on his face, giving one a good impression since he always appeared extremely friendly. However, only those who were familiar with him were aware that this Northern Dragon King was the most frightening among the three great Dragon Kings. Not only did he scheme a ton, but he would also use all means to achieve his aims. The suggestion to work with the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe had been made by him. Ziyan glared at the Northern Dragon King with great dislike. This person was the person who would stab someone in the back. Back then, the other two Dragon Kings were tempted by him to separate from the ancient Dragon tribe. This eventually led to them carrying out the split that greatly damaged the ancient Void Dragon tribe. Do you think you are worthy of having the royal bloodline of the ancient dragon? The ancient dragon tribe will really be finished if it ends up in your hands. Ziyan knit her brows. Her entire being was filled with a dark aura as she coldly cried out. The Northern Dragon King smiled upon hearing her words. He softly said, "Since niece Ziyan is so stubborn, I can only capture you by force. Once you witness the prosperity of our ancient dragon tribe in the future, you will naturally understand what I am doing now is correct. We should attack. Do not continue to delay. The situation might end up changing." The Western Dragon King and Southern Dragon King hesitated for a moment after hearing the Northern Dragon King's voice. After which, they violently nodded. Do you think that I am afraid of you just because your numbers are greater? Ziyan's face became gloomy after she saw the three of them were preparing to attack together again. Her body moved and she pulled back. A pair of 1,000-foot large phoenix wings spread from her back. Those phoenix wings were flapped and a frightening strength rose from them. Attack! These wings caused the Northern Dragon King to frown. A cold cry sounded and his body took the lead in rushing forward. The Western and Southern Dragon Kings followed close behind him. Yellow Spring Finger, Yellow Spring Palm, their bodies had just begun moving when an explosive cry suddenly resounded from empty space. A large finger and palm suddenly descended from the sky and ruthlessly smashed toward the trio. Who are you, little thief? How dare you interfere in the matters of my ancient Void Dragon tribe? This sudden attack also caused the three Dragon Kings to be startled. They quickly waved their sleeves and a frightening force shot out with lightning-like speed before shattering the Yellow Spring Finger and the Yellow Spring Palm. The trio immediately turned their icy eyes after shattering the palm and finger. Their eyes finally paused on a skinny figure who was flapping a pair of green-red bone wings. This figure remained suspended in the air a short distance from them. Brat, are you asking to die? Upon seeing their attacker, a chill flashed across the Southern Dragon King's eyes as he cried out. Xiaoyan? Ziyan, who was flapping her 1,000-foot large phoenix wings, was also startled because of this figure. Her pretty eyes slid over as a joy quickly flashed over them. Soon after, that joy changed into worry as she cried out loud, Xiaoyan, what are you doing here? You are no match for them. Withdraw now. With Ziyan's current strength, she was naturally able to see through Xiaoyan's strength at a glance, an advanced one-star Do Sheng. Although this improvement speed was already quite shocking, the opponents this time around were the renowned 3 great dragon kings of the ancient Void Dragon tribe. How long do you need? Xiao Yan ignored Zi Yan's cry. All he did was pose a question. He could tell that Zi Yan was preparing a powerful strike. Clearly, this required a lot of time to prepare. Zi Yan was startled upon hearing his question. She gently clenched her teeth before answering Xiao Yan. 10 minutes. Leave them to me. Xiao Yan gently exhaled and softly replied. You. Zi Yan knit her brows. She looked at the somewhat skinny back. The 3 great dragon kings were the top experts on the continent. The Western and Southern Dragon Kings had all become advanced 3-star Do Shengs. That Northern Dragon King was even stronger. He already had half a foot in the 4th star of the Do Sheng class. If the 3 of them were to cooperate, even an initial 4-star Do Sheng would not be able to fight with them. Even less needed to be said for Xiao Yan, who was an advanced 1-star Do Sheng. What arrogant words! The Western Dragon King coldly snorted. An advanced 1-star Do Sheng class expert might appear very strong in the eyes of others, but it was difficult for someone of this strength to stir any trouble in front of them. Xiao Yan was without expression. He completely ignored the other party's mockery. Both of his hands were swiftly placed together. After which, many extremely complicated hand seals were formed. At the same time, the spiritual strength on his brow began to stir. Do not drag things out with him. All 3 of us will attack together. The Northern Dragon King frowned. His naturally cautious self was unwilling to take a risk. Even though the other party was merely a 1-star Do Sheng, he still insisted that the 3 of them fight with all their strength and kill him before dealing with Zi Yan. The Western and Southern Dragon Kings curled their mouths upon hearing these words. They felt some disdain for the cautiousness of the Northern Dragon King, but they did not utter anything or argue with him. Their 3 bodies rushed out at the same time. Sharp lethal attacks whistled toward Xiao Yan. Chi! The seals formed by Xiao Yan's hands changed with lightning-like speed. At the same time, his spiritual strength suddenly erupted from his brow. It turned into a 1,000-foot large illusory figure that wrapped around his body. That illusory figure abruptly opened its huge mouth after the seals were formed. A strange and frightening ripple erupted from its mouth like a storm. Yellow Spring Divine Anger. Mo! Xiao Yan was clearly aware of the vast difference in strength between him and the 3 great dragon kings. It was impossible for him to even endure 5 minutes in a head-on clash. Hence, he had unleashed the only TN-class high-level Do skill that he had practiced, the Yellow Spring Divine Anger. After the strange sound was emitted from the enormous illusory figure's mouth, the empty realm seemed to have instantly quietened down. A moment later, the expressions of the 3 great dragon kings began to gradually change. They had discovered the frightening sonic wave attack that came from all directions at this moment. Spiritual attack. Be careful. The face of the Northern Dragon King was covered with a grave expression. He had not expected Xiao Yan to unleash a spiritual attack. The physical bodies of the ancient Void Dragon tribe might be extremely powerful, but they were still magical beasts. Spiritual strength was the weakness of magical beasts. Fortunately, there were not many experts in the current Do-Chi continent who knew how to use spiritual strength to attack. However, not many did not mean that they did not exist. An example was Xiao Yan. Buzz. The empty realm began to tremble at this moment. Let's join hands. The Northern Dragon King immediately sensed a giddy feeling be emitted from his head after the sonic wave was transmitted into his ear. He explosively cried out and the 3 of them gathered together. That frightening sonic attack had arrived before they could completely circulate their Do-Chi. That frightening attacking speed had caused Xiao Yan to suffer a great loss before. This time around, he had caught the 3 Dragon Kings off guard. They did not have much time to defend against that frightening speed. Bang! The spiritual assault quickly arrived and disappeared just as quickly. The bodies of the 3 Dragon Kings emitted a deep muffled sound the moment the sonic wave penetrated their bodies. Grug. The 3 stiffened bodies solidified for a moment. Both the faces of the Western and Southern Dragon Kings immediately paled. A mouthful of fresh blood was spat out. The intense pain of being sliced by a blade continued to be emitted from their minds, causing them to gain the impulse to tear off their heads. Little bastard, I will tear you apart while you're still alive. The Northern Dragon King's condition was slightly better, but his face was also a little pale. His eyes were extremely ferocious as they looked at Xiao Yan, who was a short distance away. His eyes were filled with a brutalness and a murderous intent. Xiao Yan's solemn face revealed a grin as he looked at the vicious eyes of those three individuals. The seal formed by his hands changed. He widened his mouth and a faint voice was slowly emitted, "Explode." The eyes of the Northern Dragon King shrank the moment his voice was emitted. It was as though he had detected something. He turned his head abruptly, only to see another Xiao Yan appearing a couple of meters behind. At this moment, there was a fire lotus consisting of 5 different colors in the hand of Xiao Yan. This fire lotus was slowly rotating. That Xiao Yan lifted his head the moment they turned theirs. He gave them a mysterious smile. That beautiful 5-colored fire lotus exploded like a beautiful fireworks in his hands. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible.